Good. You guys finished it? Yeah.
Kind of.
Kind of. Okay. Long as it's a sandbar. We're just playing around. That's fine if you are getting it wrong. So today we were gonna do the midterm, right? But I'm gonna move this to next Thursday. Reason for is that I'm traveling next Thursday. I'll be in California, so what I want to do is since I'm not, I don't want to waste a lecture day, right? So you guys can, Deepak can kind of just monitor and take the midterm on next Thursday.
So not the coming Thursday, next.
Well, today's Thursday.
Yeah.
I mean, we may not just take it. It could be just, but so next Thursday is when you guys can take the midterm. Make sense? Other than that, what we can kind of focus on today is some of the new functionalities, learn some new stuff, work on another test scenarios, continue to work on test scenarios and stuff like that. We are pretty good with time, right? We have entire month of July, right, which is about 8 classes, and then June, right? We have June and then part of July, so we're gonna be all right. No, August is the final project. Well, mid-July we're gonna start on the final projects, right? I haven't decided on the date. Sometime we start early based on when we are finishing, but it doesn't matter. Other than any questions so far about Selenium stuff, are you getting it? So good news is like the last batch students are doing phenomenal in the market. They're just doing one single interviews and getting jobs. I don't know what's going on. So about 6 of them already kind of got offers, right, within 2 weeks period. So it's a really good news. So I think a lot of you guys are performing higher than the last batch. So I'm expecting a better, how much better result can you get? Single interviews and people are really doing well. So that gives me confidence like that this materials works, right? Ultimately, you just have to keep doing these test scenarios, keep practicing them, breaking down these problems, right? So when you go into an interview, you don't have to know everything. Like what I want you to learn how to do the interviews is that don't try to, when you go home, don't try to solve every problem, right? Take the big scenario, break it into a single problem, just solve one at a time. And if it takes 1 hour, 2 hours to solve that specific problem, that's fine. With coding and stuff, you have to rest yourself too, right? So make sure, obviously you sleep well, you do exercise or whatever may be the case, just to kind of fresh up your mind. Because now you're not really touching on the hard problems just yet, but you can run into a very complex scenario, and if your mind is restless, it's just not gonna work, right? So make sure you allocate your time. If you're stuck in a problem, step away for a little bit, come back, and you'll see it. It's working. So that's just the way how coding world works. And make sure obviously you're working at a quiet zone or something like that. And but so far, are you able to keep up with these test scenarios? Right. Some of you guys are doing well. What I would recommend, again, Saturday you have to utilize, work with Deepak and Asan. If you're stuck at a problem, you just say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. Can you help me? Can you walk me through? But are you guys using the framework to write the test scenarios?
Yeah.
Right, the page object model pattern? Okay, you had a question? Okay. Let's start on some new features today, and then we will do a classwork as well. So this is a new feature that we want to kind of work on. Is what we have now is just a single tab, right? So a WebDriver opens this browser, knows by default you just have a single tab, and it defaults it to that tab. But what if we have a scenario where a new tab opens up or a new window opens up, right? Now what happens is your driver doesn't know which tab to work with, right? Because by default, it only works with single tab. What we have to do is we have to tell switch to the new tab, right? So the way it works is all these tabs are uniquely identified using some sort of ID, just like how we have allocators, right? So each tab also has a sort of an IDs and stuff like that. We have to get them. Yes, it's recording. So we have to get these IDs into an array and then switch them to the new tabs based on if you wanted to move to the new tab. So let's assume a test scenario where you have to go into Facebook, click on this data policy, which opens this thing, and then maybe I just want to click on a sign up button from here, right? But let's just just a dummy scenario. And once you're done with it, I want to kind of close this out and come back here. So you have to let your driver refocus to the home page again. Does that make sense? So first switch it to the new tab, and then close that open tab, and then come back to the original page to continue your test scenario. So this window handling is something that is it's built within Selenium, but again, we did a workshop yesterday, and what I was trying to explain it to everyone is that Selenium is nothing but a just bunch of functions, right? It doesn't really do anything more than that, right? It's just letting you kind of like helping you not to build click again or send keys again, right? Or handle drop down. Like those are the things that are helping you. But if you really think about it, it's not much, right? The most of the stuff you're doing is you have to write your own logic, how you want to deal with your test scenarios. All right, so let's start before we. How's this exercise?
Challenging, especially the error message with the dynamic xpath.
We're gonna go over xpath too today a little bit. All right. Okay, and then we'll extend driver factory. Okay. So the very first thing we have to build is get the list of these IDs into an some sort of an list, right? And then we can navigate from that point. So let's see what happens when we say amicably list, and these IDs are form of string. So the data type that this IDs uses is called string. And then we can just say we can just call it Windows equals to new array list. And this is where you pass in get window handle. Oh, sorry. Get window handles. That's it. So we're just creating an array list, right, of data type string with And this is what I'm getting from Selenium, right? So they have a built-in method that gives me a list of window handles. So let's do this. South Windows, right? Let's run this and see what happens. You see what happened? So it created like some sort of city window. This is the ID, right? So it's always dynamic. So that's what this ID is. But now we only have a single ID. So your driver is not confused. It knows what it's supposed to do. It's just working with a single object. But now let's say we do this. We say get driver dot find element my dot css selector, and then we'll say got it, great. So what we're gonna do is we'll cut this out. We'll get this, and then we'll run it. But now we have two windows, right? You have the first tab here and then the second tab here, right? So we have to now learn how to switch to the new one, right? So by default, we are always at 0 index, right? But if we open a new tab, we have to switch to the new index, right? So how do we do that? Well, it's pretty simple. What we can do is get driver dot switch to, right, dot window, and this is where you can say, hey, give me the windows dot get, and we can put into, move into an index. So in our case, when we want to move to the new window, right, all we have to say is index what? Index 1. Excellent, right? So now your driver will be focused at, so when we go back here and then we click on this, now when you're looking for this element, it's going to find it for you, right? Otherwise it's actually going to look here, and that's not good. So that's pretty much how this ID thing looks like under the hood. You don't have to worry too much about it. It's just that you have to know that, okay, hey, you have to switch to a new window. Every time a new tab opens, you have to perform these actions to move there, right? All right. But let's say I have another scenario where I move to the new window, right? I perform my actions, whatever I had to do, but now I want to close that specific window and then focus back to the original window. Does that make sense? So your test scenario is from your home page, it clicks on a link, opens a new window, performs some actions there, right? And then what happens is, after performing the actions, I want to close that tab and come back, refocus on my home page so I can continue with my test scenarios, right? How do we do that? So what we have to do, we have to write a quick loop here. We have to say for int, and here's the trick. You just have to start the count from I equals to 0. I equals to 1. So I is less than Windows dot size, right? And then I plus plus. So we're saying, hey, get me this window size and start the count from 1. So we kind of leave the first index alone, right? The 0 index is alone, like, because that's our home page, right? So we don't have to deal with anything. And now, even if you have 3 windows open, it will pretty much close all of them and just leave the original one open. So now we're saying, hey, get driver dot switch to that window, and then we can say windows dot get I. So it doesn't have to be just a single window. Even if you have, let's say you open 3 tabs during your test cases and you want to close all of them up and then come back to your home page, and this will close all of the external windows and then refocuses on your home page. And all you have to do after that is get driver dot close. So remember, I think the difference between close and quit, the close will just close a single tab, focus tab or whatever you want to call it, and then the quit will close everything, like the entire, even if you have, as many windows that you have open. And then right after your loop, you can just simply say, hey, get driver dot switch to that, because you have to switch back to your original window, right? And then we'll say windows from the original list, we'll say get 0. Hopefully that works. So we're going to the home page, we're clicking on privacy link, we're getting list of window handles, and then we are switching to the new window here, right? Then we're writing this loop where we start the count from 1, and as many windows that is open, in our case it's just a single window, it's going to iterate through the list and close all of the windows except for the one that's a 0 index, right? And then once we are closing each of those windows, the last thing we have to do is refocus your driver back to the original home page. Again, this is a one-time thing. You just write it once, put it on your base page, and forget about it, right? Because every time you need to switch to Windows, you just call these methods and perform action that way. So right, it's fine. It's kind of doing its thing. All right. So what we can do is we can actually perform some actions. So once we switch here, we can say get driver dot find element by dot link text, and then we can say sign up dot click, right? And then we'll just wait a little bit here. Play dot sleep. 2 seconds. And we'll wait a little bit after the switch so you get to see it. Alright, and now we should close it and come back out. Make sense? Any questions on window handles?
Can you just show me how you got this window handle with that spaces selected again? I missed it all.
Oh, that's.
How do you get CSS?
Um, oh, that's just you just right click on this. You inspect it, right? And if you go back to your cron path, um, let me see. Sometime. Oh, I'm doing privacy link. Sorry. This is the sign up page.
Okay, I got the ID.
Yeah, so you just kind of go here, and then you see the CSS selector.
CSS.
Yeah.
Can you use the ID here?
They have ID, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use ID probably. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Let's do something else. And all right. This is what I want to do now. I want to be able to go here, right? And let's say I just select whatever, Boston, right? Or let's call it New York. All right. So you can type New York, and then you see how this date, right? So what you want to do is obviously you want to click here. As soon as you click on this text field, it's going to open up this date. I want you to select current date from here, right? From your calendar, and we're going to do this together. But for classwork, it's a little bit more involving, but it's in that same direction, right? So now, every time you go open this calendar, make sure you're always selecting the current date, which is the 30th, right? That's what we want to do right now, nothing more than that. So how do we deal with calendar? That's the bottom line. Like, I mean, you work with any applications, you're going to have to deal with calendar, unfortunately, right? So when you're dealing with calendar, it gets a little bit complicated. And I just don't see an app without a calendar, right? I mean, you're just gonna have something, some sort of calendar is gonna be somewhere on your web page, right? So let's build this together and see what happens. Now, as I'm creating these helper methods, I need you to move them to base page. So that's how you're going to gain experience about using the base page, right? So try to figure out how you're going to simplify this action. So because let's say there are 20 different scenarios where you have to switch to new window. Are you going to write all this code? No, right? Because switching window is a common functionality for your entire application. This is not something specific to a test scenario. So I want to make sure that you guys know how to start leveraging the base page functionalities. Now, let's create this calendar thing. Right? We'll extend. Right, factory, and then we'll say test employee select. Okay. We just have to do a simple thing here. We just have to change the URL from Facebook to hotel. All right. And so very first thing what I want to do is, so I say I want to select current date, right? So let's figure out what this current date thing is, right? So let's say I'm going to start with simple date format, right? So let's call it SDF equals to new simple date format. What is this format though? Let's figure this bits out. What format is this? It looks like it's a day, but it's a single day. It's not like 01, 02, right? It's not 2-digit days. It's just a single day, right? And how do we specify days on formats? Do you remember? Just a single D, right? If you do DD, then that's going to be 2-digit days, right? 01, 02. So in our case, we just want to have a single D, right? So we go here. Yeah, but that's fine, right? So that's still single, right? Because it's not appending 0 to it, right? So 11 is still a single day. I know. You'd be like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense, but that's just the way it works. So the pattern that we want to deal with is D, right? And then we want to deal with what? Current date, which is a little bit easier, right? Date, and then we call it date equals to new date. And then we'll call it string. We need to be in a string format because those day is going to come back as a string format, not as a integer or date. So, format, and then we pass in the date. So this will take care of. So the first part is done, right? We've done is we figured out how to get the today, current date, and that didn't even involve any type of Selenium or anything, right? So now let's focus on getting, because the very first thing you have to do is you have to go and click here, right? The clicking is the first thing, so we have to figure out these elements. But let's write this code out, and then we'll figure out the element part, and then we'll say find element, get driver dot find element. We'll use xpath here, right? And then all we want to do is click. So the click will trigger the display of the calendar. Make sense? So what we want to focus on here is, hey, I'm going to inspect this thing, and if we look at on path, this is your relative expert, right? You can just click on it and you copy it, and it should ideally work. So if we take this xpath, we put it here, input, it's an input fill with the ID, whatever, right? So that's going to take care of the click. But once you click on it, things get a little bit hard. So what we need to do is we need to store all of the days into an array and iterate through them, right? If any of those days, so the way it's going to work is we're saying, hey, if any of those days equals to current day, then click on it. That's what we are trying to do. So first, but before we can do this, we already have the current date. This is kind of our expected value. But we need to store this into an array, right? And then going back to, again, iterating over it, and then we should be fine. So these are web elements. Again, everything is a web element. So list um, web element, and then we'll call it days equals to get driver dot find elements. So in this case, we're going to be using obviously find elements, right? By that xpath, and that's it. We're kind of just, because we're not performing any action, we're just storing them, right? Let's not even worry about the locator. We'll deal with the locator. One thing I would say, like, try to build the skeleton first, right, before you start. Because if you start going being locator and then you didn't really finish your thought of what you're trying to do, you're gonna waste more time, right? So it's, you have to kind of get all these things done before you start finding locator, because that's the most annoying part of it, right? So keep that for last and deal with it when you're ready. And then we write a quick for loop here to iterate over the days, and then we'll say, hey, web element day equals to, comparing with the days, and then we'll say um, we could do it that way. Let's say if day if day dot get text, right? If day dot get text equals to today, I want to just click on that day. Dot click. But right after the click, you kind of want to break out, right? Because if it doesn't break out, it's going to iterate through it again and find it again. So as soon as you do this, we can break out. But let's just pause here for a little bit so we can see that it's got selected. And then now we'll say breakout. Any questions so far?
Can you revise it one more time?
Try to read it, see if it makes sense to you. We don't use absolute xpath. It's only relative xpath. We're gonna go over it today. Oh, I didn't put that yet. We're gonna put it because we don't know that day. Like, we don't know the xpath that gives us all the days yet, right? But let's assume we got this. But do you understand the logic?
Yes.
Right? Are you able to read this for loop? It's pretty descriptive, right? Hey, I'm going to iterate over all the days, right? But if any of the day text equals to today, then I want to click on it, and then I'm going to pause for 2 seconds, right? It's pretty. Come on, you're a Java guy now. No, we didn't put it yet, right? Because it's gonna be a little bit work to find it. So let's figure out how can we get this XPath, right? That's the challenge now. So let's say you selected this. So you're gonna have to play with it for a little bit, right? So this is Mondays. you have the date pickers here. This is the left side of it, right? So that's the month. What's inside of the month? Not much. All right, so this is the table. Looks like you have to mess with. All right. You can also copy the xpath. Let's put it here. So this gave us an absolute xpath. So that's not good. So what we can do is let's find the parent of this object, right? So we're gonna start from here. And we're gonna say something like // star, and then we'll say at class equals to let me see something. I was misspelling it. So this is kind of how we start to write custom XPath. So you see, we're saying, hey, go into your DOM, go to this page, right? And when we say star, it means it searches the entire page and find a class. Instead of an ID, we're saying find a class with this name, which is widget date picker dash PD. But what it did is it selected everything for us, right? All this stuff is now available. But how can we only get these values? That's what we really need to do, right? So this is the new terms I'm going to introduce, which we're gonna learn. And then dot. So now we are saying, hey, when we got to this point, right? I only want you to get me everything that is a link. Does that make sense? I want you to give me all of that, all of the elements underneath the class widget date picker. I only want you to get me the ones that are linked, right? So we can use descendant to kind of highlight everything under that specific XPath or an element within that scope, right? So we're going to learn about doing custom XPath, but this is the first time, we're using a functions that this is the most common one that you're probably going to be using, right? Um, but in high level, this will give us all of these values. And whenever a value matches your current date, it's supposed to click on it. All right. But most importantly, writing this XPath, it's sometime for these calendars and stuff like that. It's not super simple. It's just like as you kind of work toward it, if you practice a while, you'll get it, right? But at the same time, you need to spend some time figuring out this XPath. Sites like Facebook that we've been working on is a very easy website, right? But when you come into like a complex website such as like hotel or investments and things like that, deals with numbers and price and all of that, it gets a little bit more time consuming. So what we're gonna do is this will be our XPath that we will dump it here, and we'll try to run it and see what happens.
I have a question. We need the dot.
I don't think you need the dot, right? I mean, do I have a single slash here? It's just kind of think of like the way XML. This is a different language, right? So XPath itself is like a very tiny programming language, so to speak, they built. So they have these built-in functionalities like descendants as a parent, child, contains, right? Someone built this stuff for us, so we can kind of just use it. Similar to when we did scanner, right? When you did scanner.nextLine, you didn't build nextLine, right? It was just something that you use. Same thing with XPath, And like I said, we're gonna learn about this. That's what your weekend project is anyway, to study XPath for the rest of the weekend.
I'm sorry, but how do you, if you use a double slash,
Well, we have to since we are at a slash discussion of slashes. Let's talk about that, right? 1 second. Let me answer his question. So, double slash means this is kind of the starting point, right? We are starting from here, and since this is a relative path, I'm going to search for everything, right? Like a star means I am not only looking. Say, I could say something like this. I could say something like class. So in this case, it's only going to look for classes, right, within the thing. But now, well, this gives me like, okay, hey, search for the entire page, and then when you find a class with this name, right? Now, when we did this, remember it was highlighting everything, right? Like a text fields, button, whatever may be the case, the header, the label. We don't want all of that junk, right? What we're saying is, hey, I just want you to give me all of the days. And in this case, all the days were stored as a link. Now, there might be a website you work with and all the days might be stored as a button. Does that make sense? Or they could be stored as an input field. I don't know that, right? So whatever the developer using, whichever library they're using, that's what they're going to be using it, right? But as long as you understand the concept, you can kind of figure out, okay, hey, instead of an A, you'll be using something like input, right? So, but the idea for us is that, hey, we needed to get all of the dates. One way or other, we need to get all of those values into a list, and then we can start working on it. Make sense? All right. Did you guys see this? Did it work?
But when you run it, it's open to.
That I'm not worried about. I just want to select current dates. So this is not a good. This is a bug here, right? So this is actually a pretty massive bug, right? Because it's looking for the 30th. So now you have to check few things, right? And I'm not going to do that work. You're going to fix that bug since, Gia found it. Gia is actually a very good QA. He always finds these bugs. So as soon as you go here, right? The biggest problem now, what's happening is by default is selecting June, right? And then what your app doesn't understand is what month it is. It just knows, like our script is not smart enough to understand. It just knows these numbers, right? So you say, hey, I'm looking for 30th, and it's clicking on that date. Does that make sense? Even though you got your current date, but in this case, it's just selecting 30th. Now, this is what we have to do. You have to find the current month. If the current month is not equals to what is displaying here, then you have to tap back and go back to current month and then select the value. Make sense? Victory is like, I don't want to work.
This class work?
And that will be your classwork, unfortunately. And since we found it, we can fix it. That's so. The existing, I'm going to share the code, and I want you to spend next 1 hour, see if you can figure it out. And if you solve it, let's go over it together, and we'll take care of it. So again, what do we have to do? What are the steps? Can someone walk me through the steps? So by default, you have to first check if this month, the very first month, is equals to current month. If it's not current month, you're going to have to tap back. I mean, in this case, it's not going to happen because we have you have to tap back here, and then by default, obviously, you're going to be on May, right? And then only, but if it's by default, but like when you test this tomorrow, it's fine, right? Because now you're already at June, your current dates are fine. So you have to do this logic a little bit and figure it out, test it out, and solve this problem for me. All right? And I don't have to give you all that garbage. That will be this is actually an interesting classwork, right? Believe me, you guys able to solve these problems? I don't see why you don't get hired. That's how I look at it, right? Okay, I share the code base. Let's get this working, and whoever finishes first, you get a Starbucks gift card. This one's a little bit time consuming. I just sent it, so. Yeah. Yeah, because we have to first do the interactive. Exceptions, right? Remember, these are checked exceptions. You have to throw it. So you have to add that to your. Any questions from online about the test?
Thank you. You have one reward night.
Oh. Do you want to use my reward night? This is Rahul's code. I mean, he was kind enough to share it. So, yeah. So very first thing, we didn't have to really change much, right? Um, this could have been done few different ways, but this is one of the way we can kind of achieve it. Is well, first we had to get the text of the focus month, right? The kind of like a display month, default month, however you want to name it, right? So we need to make sure that okay, we get that text. I'm not going to give him hard time for this just yet until we learn how to write it because this is not good. Um, so we'll and we get the get text, right? So we store that. So what we are doing here is that we are storing this value, the focused month, whatever that is, right? If it's June, May, it doesn't matter. We are storing this in this variable. And then what he did is um, he split that month because the month was coming, actually it was just a single element, right? It's not two elements. Year and month is not two elements, it's just a single element. So what he did is he pretty much used the split functionality to break that into an array, right? So that becomes an array. And then what we do is we just reassign focus month to split at 0, right? So now we are saying, okay, hey, well, in this case, the focus month, it's still a focused month, right? I mean, it still doesn't change anything. But in this case, this was a full month and year together. What happened was we split at that, and now this is more in an array format, and the very first index is your month, right? And then what we've done is we just updated that with the split at 0. So that in that case, it would just be June. And then what he's done here is that he just used the calendar instance to do the simple date format. We all know that triple M's will only give us the full month name, not a short month, full month name. And then we format that calendar that get time gives the current time. Okay.
Uh, Full month means 3, 3M or more than 3M?
3M, I think. 3M does it, I think. But it was working. So
Yeah, because of working, but because they're not equals, always not equals.
no, but it
Doesn't-
went back if it's not equals.
Yeah, but it's always a full month or
We'll take care
I
of that.
think more than 3. If you need to get the full month, more than 3, because the 3M it means short form. Can you print out?
Okay. Well, let's just go through it, and then we'll take care of that. Format is not the biggest deal here right now. So, guys, let's focus. And then we'll get the current month. We're saying, hey, if the focus month is not equals to the current month, right? Then click on this, right? If the focus month is not equals to the current month, you're going to click on it, and then you just go through your. Nothing changed here. Everything kind of stayed the same. Does everyone's code kind of somewhat looks like this, right? So if not, kind of go back. If the format is not good, fix it, right? If it's 4 amps, then add 4 amps to it. But it would be something like this. So if you're able to achieve it, and it's a lot of code here, but that's kind of how it is. I just wanted to show you how much work it requires to automate certain scenarios. You have to also cover all the edge cases, right? And but once you kind of get a hang,
Because the Starbucks card is for the
I guess Rabu gets a Starbucks card. He finished first, so I didn't say the value, so it could be. I just say you get a Starbucks reward card.
always engaged.
um, but anyhow, I'll take care of him. Any other questions on this? All right, let's do one more thing now. And so xpath is one of the topic I don't like teaching. It's just frustrating. This is the least important, least favorite but very important topic. So what I found is like this site has a lot of like garbage, but also this one thing they have it pretty decently written. So if you look at the XPath, it's pretty well documented, right? So I'm going to kind of get you started on this, right? There's just so many different ways, but we don't use 95% of it, right? So I don't want you to go home and go crazy over XPath. Long as you kind of know what you're doing, know how to use 2, 3 of those, I think you should be fine. Um, so how does an XPath works? So I guess let's just talk about the definition of it. It defines an XML path is a syntax of language of finding an element on the web page using XML path expression, right? XPath is used to find the location of any elements on a web page using HTML DOM structure. The basic format of an XPath is explained below in the screenshot. So if you look, what's a DOM structure? Can someone refresh my mind? What's the DOM structure? We talked about it a little bit, right? Um, uh, so everything that you see under the hood, right? Think of all this stuff, all this junk. This is done through something called DOM structure. So entire page that you're seeing, like all the code that is written under the hood, that's what's the entire DOM structure. What they're saying is that obviously with XPath, the XML path expression, we can use that to navigate to any element within the DOM structure, right? So that's what that means. So it will be the XPath equals to / tag name, and then it could be your attribute. And like I said, it could be ID, name, class, it doesn't matter, equals to the value, right? So your select the current node, tag name, select attributes name, whatever, right? So that's how you form your XPath. And then you have, XPath contains the path of the element situated at the web page. Standard syntax for creating an XPath is XPath equals to tag name, attribute equals to value, right? So that's how we are going to be using it. There are many different ones. We kind of high level talked about it. We can use obviously ID, class name, link text, XPath, and CSS path. We talked about those earlier. So these are different ways to locate element in a WebDriver, in Selenium WebDriver. Now this is one thing I think we already figured this out. So types of XPath. So you have the absolute XPath. Yes, it's recording. You have the absolute XPath and you have the relative XPath, right? Do you guys kind of know the difference now? Yeah, what is it?
Absolute XPath means code looks checks the whole page, but relative XPath means just this one location. It looks just in
Well, yeah, I know what you're trying to say, but it came out as a wrong definition. Both looks at the entire page. That doesn't change. Can someone else try explaining it? Bobby? Isha?
Not my data.
So absolute path is something that we start kind of navigating from source level. Remember we gave the location example, I think, when we talked about absolute path. So if you look at this person has this element like testing, right? When you look at absolute path, it starts from HTML, goes through body, first div, section, div1, div, like entire path from, think of like a navigation, right? And you're going from here, from let's say from New York City to DC, and it's navigating you every single path, right? Make a right turn here, make a left turn here, right? Whereas you can have a navigation that takes you to, it starts when you get inside of DC, right? Because it already kind of knows how to get to DC, but then only thing that from that point on, we can start navigating. So that's the difference, right? But the disadvantage of an absolute path is it's a lot of disadvantage, right? Because as soon as they add a new element or a new image, anything new gets added, the entire thing is broken. So you're going to have to maintain your test cases almost every day, right? That's not convenient. Whereas relative XPath would be maybe we will start searching from this card, right? So only your XPath will break if something changes within that card. Make sense, right? So if we go back to our hotels.com, if we use an absolute path for here, what it's going to do is first it's going to start from the entire page, right? And then it will say, okay, HTML, body, and then come to this card, go through each of those divs, right? And then get to this point. So if tomorrow they add something here or they add a new promotion or whatever, that's the new elements added in between your absolute XPath and it will break. So in an interview, if they ask between, well, XPath is the last thing you use, right, obviously, but between absolute XPath and relative XPath, which one do you use? Obviously relative XPath, but then why? The why comes into play and you have to explain it, all right? So that's, in high level, that's what absolute XPath is. And then for relative XPath is the path starts from the middle of the HTML DOM structure. It starts the double forward slash, like I said, we talked about double forward slash, which means it can search the element anywhere within the web page. So double slash with a combination of star, right? It's going to search on the entire page, but it's only going to look for what you tell him to do. So that's when you write the custom XPath, right? It doesn't always have to be custom. It could be something that our cron path kind of give it to us, but that's also a custom XPath, right? That tool that we are using, it writes the XPath for us. So in this case, what we're saying, hey, go to, on the entire DOM structure, look for a class called future box, right? And then within the future box, look for a text called testing, right? Now, if we said, hey, look for a text called testing, that might not be a good approach because you might have multiple places where testing might exist. Does that make sense? But if we go into saying, no, go into the future box first and then look for a text, well, now you have a scope. I'm only going to look for testing within this area of the page, right? Whereas if you just say, hey, look for a text called testing, that's like looking all over the page, right? So you might have a multiple elements that is called testing, right? So always, try to get, drill it down, get to a card that you're working with, and then interact with the element after that. So you can do all of that through this XPath strategy. So that's the difference between relative XPath and I guess, you're going to read this stuff over the weekend. So, spend some time reading it. I know it's not the super fun topic, but you need to be good at it. Otherwise, you can't do your work as far as locating elements and stuff. These are some basic ones, like, you can use contains, like XPath. If it contains the type, which is sub, right? Then click on it. If it contains the name, it's similar to what we've been doing with our Java, right? So this small languages, they have about 10 or 15 functionalities that we can use, but like I said, we are probably not gonna use most of them. We don't even have to do name contains because if it's named, then we can just use name that we have built in for it while we use XPath. So ID is another one. So there's a lot of them that you don't really have to do. If it contains an href, so now let's think of a link where you're looking for href, you can pretty much use this approach. So contains is one way, but you can also add all functionalities, right? You can say, hey, if an element has a type, either submit or name button reset, if either one of them matches, then go ahead, look for the element and perform actions.
What's a href?
Href. So href is when you look at a link, right? So let's say you have a link here, right? If you inspect that link, see there is an attribute called href. So href means there's a reference to this link. Like if I click on this link, then I'm going to go to this login page, right? So sometime you may have a dead link, right? So what you're saying is, hey, just go for, maybe you want to kind of look for an element with actual path, right? So maybe you don't know what the, let's say you're looking for an Instagram or Twitter. You know how a lot of the website they have all these like icons. Now they may not have a name for those because just icons, right? But under the hood, they're going to have reference link, like which is href. So you can say, hey, look for an element with href twitter.com or contains Twitter, right? And then clicks on it, right? So there's a lot of edge cases. Like, I mean, it's hard to kind of visualize a lot of those things unless you have some experience. But you don't have to stress too much about this stuff. All you have to do is that, no, this is some sort of an attribute, right? That's how you have to approach it, right? But I'll recommend, you guys, would it help for someone to come in and do maybe one HTML class?
That would really help.
So I can ask a friend, like he's really good at front end stuff. So you can maybe I'm not sure. Right? Okay. Robin doesn't like to spend money, but I'm just kidding. But then I may ask him toward the end, like maybe do an HTML class. So you get to see how a web page is built and all that. Yeah, you can take some online class. I think that's a better approach, right? So you can kind of, there's like a lot of YouTube and stuff like that, but don't stress about it now. That's toward the end. That's not the main important part right now. Okay. Where we are. Same thing with end, right? You know how we have the n%, like we have two conditions. If only both conditions are true, then look for that element and find that element. We can use starts with. It's similar to Java, right? You can say, hey, if the label starts with ID message, then do that. Same thing with ends with. So now you have some functionalities here, right? The ones that we've done is it's called descendants, right? So I don't want to kind of go over this one by one and get you bored with this stuff. What I want you to do is, the other ones are very easy. Over the weekend, I want you to spend a few hours and try to locate an element using these functionalities like ancestor. What does ancestor means, and so forth, right? What is child means? What does the preceding means, right? It does a pretty good explanation of that, and try to apply this on your Facebook site or a hotels.com site, right? I mean, they're showing you some other site, but I want you to kind of apply this on something that you've been working with, so you get a little bit of understanding what it's doing. Make sense? And once you come back on Saturday, if you have questions, you run it by Deepak and Asan. Any questions on this xpath stuff?
When did we change URLs?
If the ID changes, you have to go and change it on your script. Or if an element, what do you mean?
On Facebook error message, their ID always changes.
Well, in this case, you have to find out what type of element is this. Is it a link? Is it an input? Is it a
View, it's view, but if we try to find the right type, they have a lot of.
Right, so you have to find some sort of unique something, but at the same time, use one of those approach to try to maybe grab on the element that is next to it, right? So you can find an element that is next to it, kind of like, let's say you have three houses, right? But you don't know the house number in the middle, right? So you can say, okay, get me to the house on the left, and then whichever house on the right, click on it. So it's like you can do so many different, things. You say, okay, that's the neighbor. So you can kind of figure out that way. So if you can find something neighboring element, and then just kind of use that. So you can do following siblings here. You have the parent. So one of the approach, see if you can apply that and solve that problem. So the key thing is the very first thing what you have to do, what you guys have to do is spend some time tomorrow to read this out, right? Before you touch on the homework task, right? Well,
Like before the previous homework and then complete it because of the I didn't keep on changing.
no, that's okay. Well, now that's the whole point of that, right? So if you're struggling this problem, you're gonna face that at work every day. So you can't get frustrated and you can't say I don't know how to do it, right? So now with this, these are all the options that you can kind of use to locate these elements. So now let's go over the homework real quick. So what I want you to do is a little bit more involving here. So you have to go into hotels.com, enter the city name, right? And then select check-in date as tomorrow's date, right? Select checkout date as 7 days from tomorrow, right? So what I want you to do is say, so we'll click here. Tomorrow is what? So your logic's still gonna work, the logic that we've written. So you probably have to apply that, and then click on 31st, and then you have to click 7 days from there, right? So I guess we'll do 7, yeah. So 7 days from there, and I want to make sure that this briefcase value equals to 7. Make sense? But we're not done yet. So that's the first step. That will be your first 7 night. It doesn't matter 7 or 6, but you know I want you to. That's what we're doing so far. Selecting check-in date as tomorrow's date, but the checkout date as 7 days from tomorrow, right? So again, that value may fall in both calendars, right? Because it can fall on June, obviously. It can also fall on July, depending on when the month. So you have to take all these edge cases into consideration. Then what I want you to do is, I want you to select, did I say 2 rooms here?
Yes, true.
Okay. So just select 2 rooms, and then for room 1, select 2 adults, right? So by default it's selected to 2, make sure it's selecting 2. And then verify user can. So once you select 2, I want you to verify that user can only select up to 6 child, right? Now here's the thing. The way you can do is you put all these values into an array, right? And then do a count. How many values are there minus 0? So that's one way to do it. Or you can just check the last value equals to 6, right? So there's so many different ways to do it. So do that validation. But once you do that, so that's your second step of validation. So one test scenario, but we are doing few validations here. Then the last thing is that I want you to select 6 child here, but once you select 6, I want to make sure that there are 6 drop-down values are displayed, right? So select children value as 6, verify there are 6 drop-down display for age at check-in, 1 for each child, right? Make sense? No, these are all, you know, you have to spend time. That's the only way it works, right? If you want to get a job quick, you do these things, right?
I have a question. We have to the scenario breakdown.
Just do it in one scenario.
One scenario.
Yeah, I mean we're not really doing put in the final project. We're gonna organize it much better, right? But for now, I just wanted to find elements, do verification, do the math. I mean, do the calculation, do all of that stuff, right?
Because if
One of them fails, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But if you want to do 3 different scenarios, that's fine too. right? But for now, just do one scenario. Don't make it complicated for yourself. The key is to locating elements, finding it, and so forth.
Okay.
Any questions from online?
I plus plus.
Okay. We have to use assert or
Yes, sir. Yeah, of course. Everything for us, sir.
okay.
You guys, any questions? Are we good? All right. So,
I had a question with the homework.
oh, what's up?
No, so like Gina was saying, like one of the parts was dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So, but I was able to isolate. That was fine. But the steps you gave, like, let's say you put in one of the emails. At first, Facebook would accept that email as valid until you click the submit button.
Oh yeah. Well,
So,
I
so
didn't
then
know.
we had to add in a whole bunch of other things.
Did you solve the problem?
If I put in one email, it's solved. But I couldn't. Well, I had to work more to loop it to get through all of them,
All right.
and I didn't loop it.
You could put the entire test into a loop,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do.
all right? So you can pretty much do that
Or I put all the emails you gave into
and
a
refresh the
array.
page after each of the stuff.
Even if you do that, some of it is like some of the values it does accept. Even if there are some that it doesn't. Some that are like 4, 5 that it
Yeah.
does
So
accept.
that's totally fine. If it accepts it, that means
But then
it's
it gives a different error message. So then the test fails because it's only working for those 5 or 6.
Right.
Please enter your email address again.
Since we're
Re-enter the email.
Email.
no. If that's the error if that's your concern, this is completely okay with me, because now you can bring this up to the product management and say, hey guys, these are all invalid email, but you're kind of confusing the user with two different errors, one at a submit level and one at
Re-enter.
a re-entering level, right?
But now I created a class that tests the emails before I send it to the website. Is that okay?
Well,
That weeds out pretty much anything that's invalid.
but is it still entering into that field?
Now, if I do that, then it will only enter valid emails.
Yeah, because that's the whole point is to test that functionality on that field. I mean, we can write another logic to verify it, right? But that's not the goal. The goal is make sure whoever written that front end code base,
It's working.
they written the correct code, right? That's the thing. But long as you kind of being creative and figuring out different ways to solve this problem, that's kind of what engineering is, right? And you can't kind of just sit back and say it's not working and I'm not gonna do anything about it. That's not gonna solve a problem. But are you guys comfortable with this homework?
It's only when we start that we
We
really
will
know.
still,
If we have an option to say no, then no.
we're still
No,
stuck
I mean,
on the
this
last
is-
one,
this
you
is-
know? We're still stuck on the last one. Can we delay this one?
You can delay it. I gotta let other people work on it. Okay. I mean, you have to spend time. If you're behind, you have to spend more time. 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours. It doesn't matter. But you have to spend time. If you're not spending time, it's not gonna be good for you, right? Some people learn fast. Some people learn a little slow, right? But we cannot slow down the entire class for. So come on Saturday, work with Deepak and Asan again, and see.
Did you share the code for the last homework? We're done with it.
Yeah, I didn't do that homework, so I'm gonna have to get it from someone and we can send it, right? But the whole point of these homeworks is for you to practice, right? It's not about getting it right or wrong. When we do the final project, now, okay, I'm looking into okay, how are you writing the code? Are you doing it the right way? This is the right approach.
Actually just comparing. So
Yeah.
see whether, sometimes it's just like his code is I think really nice from what I did.
Yeah.
So it's just comparing the difference and understanding.
Okay, that's fine.
I didn't use refresh. I used clean. Clean it's email value. When I
You just clear it.
get clear
Right.
again, writing and
We can also go over the homework on Monday, right? The last two homeworks. Any questions? So Monday we'll do more Selenium related stuff, and then Thursday we're going to have a midterm. I'm not gonna be here Thursday, but Deepak we're going to conduct the midterm, right?
Do we have class on Monday?
Yeah. I
Even
just,
if it's evening?
it's not. It can be Monday. So who said it's Monday?
Calendar says that.
No, it's Tuesday or Wednesday.
No, 29, 29 fast. That's what the calendar says. But you never know. It moves.
No, it's Monday. Monday we have class.
If it is Monday, bring biryani. Bring all the food.
No, we have to do it Thursday. Okay, it's that's the thing. All right, I can't change it. I don't want to miss another lecture.
What time today?
You guys want to do it today? All right. Until 11? No. So let's just do next Thursday. It's not a big deal. If you can't make it, I can send you a link and you can do it from home, right? Well, you gotta talk to Deepak, but it's an in class thing. So make sure everybody try to make it here. Okay. What's the problem with Thursday? How's how's exam has to do with any of that?
She's gonna be hungover for 2 days.
You want to party for 2 days, you can party after.